Hi everyone, welcome back to Current Affairs Unfiltered. I'm your host, Paige Fullman. Oh my god, what a week it has been. I am recording this on Wednesday, September 17th at about 8 p.m. Eastern Time. A week ago today, on September 10th of 2025, Charlie Kirk was assassinated at Utah Valley University doing one of his signature debates with college students. This is a story that has shocked the political world, raised a lot of questions about political extremism, accountability, media narratives, and also hypocrisy in modern American politics. This has been wild to watch unfold. And in every sense of this story, this should be raising 5 alarm fires, especially for people on the left, because this has just surpassed anything that I thought would happen in Trump's first year. And frankly, at this point, is being used as an excuse to target people, to target nonprofits, to do a whole host of undemocratic things. I am going to be choosing my words very carefully in this episode. I am very scared about the fact that people are taking the things that other people say, turning it into their jobs, and their jobs are firing them. And in a lot of cases I've seen, they're not being fired for their words, but they are being fired because the company fears the wrath of the Trump administration, Trump Justice Department, whatever it may be. So I am going to tread carefully, and I want this episode to focus on the aftermath of what happened. Because frankly, the whole thing is disturbing. But what's happened in the last 5 days, 6 days, starting from the day after Charlie Kirk was assassinated, has been almost as alarming, if not more alarming, than the day that he was shot. Never thought I'd be recording an episode about my first lived political assassination. I do also want to be clear that this episode is not about whether or not I or you or anybody agreed or disagreed with Charlie Kirk's politics. This is about how people are reacting and what this says about our political climate and what has gone on in the last 5 days. Like, this is not supposed to be a debate forum where we're talking about the merits of Charlie Kirk as a person. God. Okay, so just for a little bit of background, if you don't know who he was, Charlie Kirk was a conservative talking head who founded Turning Point USA. Even if you disagreed with Kirk's messaging, what he believed in, which I'll be honest, I did, celebrating his death is a little disturbing. In all of the chaos that unfolded, there were genuinely people that were excited about the fact that this guy was dead. I, maybe consciously or not, chose to rise above that and look at it and go, this is bad. Like, I'm scared for what comes after this. Nonetheless, we've seen over the years how political hatred can sometimes be performative, but I think there is a big difference between criticizing somebody's ideas and saying, you know, this guy sucked, but whatever else. But there's a big difference between that and cheering for somebody's death. Additionally, what I found the most bizarre in the direct aftermath, like the day that he was shot, was the graphic videos posted of Charlie Kirk literally dying before our eyes. If you did not see the video, I am not unclear on if you will be able to find that on social media anymore, but for a very long time, those videos were up. And I don't know if there's a problem with who I'm following or what my algorithm is feeding me, but I saw that video enough times to last me a lifetime. And it took the social media sites a couple of days to scrub the videos as well as they could. I know that because I posted a TikTok on the podcast account where I basically just said this is wrong. And that video got deleted, and I said, that's odd. And then I saw another creator that said, Caroline actually, who was on this podcast, she said her Charlie Kirk video got deleted. And I said, I think these got swept up and they're trying to get rid of the videos of this man being killed. But it took them a minute. And that's disturbing in and of itself. But nonetheless, these videos were posted all over the place. And what I found so bizarre about that is that these videos were at some point originally posted by people at his event and presumably supporting him, because the protesters were towards the back of the event. And if you saw the videos, you probably saw videos that were very up close and in the front. And not to mention, these are his supporters, and they didn't even cut the videos. They didn't cut the part where he gets his neck shot off. Like, that, insane. I don't understand that. Especially if you are a fan of somebody, I don't understand what goes through your head when you're like, oh, I'm going to post a video of like one of my idols, favorite people, someone I look up to, whatever the case may be. I'm going to post that video of them getting their neck blown off. What? Anyways, so that was the most disturbing part to me. One, the videos, but two, where the videos originated from. I don't know. If you want to be weird about people being weird about his death, let's start with the people that published a literal shooting and bleeding out of a man. Now, I think this goes without saying, but politically motivated assassinations in the US are nothing new. Kennedy, MLK, RFK, they are a thing of our history, but I feel that this one is unique because it's coming at a time of already heightened tensions and polarization domestically, and also at a time where there is an ever-expanding far-right ecosystem online, which, in my opinion, I believe the shooter was a griper. I believe he was part of a far, far right faction that... I'm going to sound like a crazy person explaining this. I believe politics and where you fall on the political spectrum, I don't even want to use the word spectrum because that infers like straight line. I think it's a circle. And there's a point where you go so far right that you almost start hitting a little bit left. That's what this guy was, in my opinion. Because of that, I think Kirk's death is a symptom of a much larger issue. The radicalization of political discourse and the way social media amplifies extremist voices. And also, sorry, we have a man problem. We have a male problem. We also have a youth problem of people that build their whole lives online and that's all they have. They don't have life outside of the online. That's how you get people being radicalized in these spaces. That's a story for another time. I'm not going to stick on that because that seems to be a point right now that is contested. That is just what I believe. I believe the shooter was a griper, and I believe that because of his views and like what the groypers believe, that the media is getting it very confused. The things that were written on the bullets were groyper memes, and I don't think that mainstream media has the capacity or the understanding to know that, and they're kind of just leaving it up to the public to discuss, which is fine. And we can get into this later, newspapers and people that are saying that the shooter was from the right wing just in general are being sued, are being fired, or being whatever thing you want to ascribe to them. So that is my opinion. And what I will say is that I see how it can be confusing. I see how those messages on the bullets point to maybe the shooter being left wing. I see how his circumstances could make people think that he's in the left wing. But that's all I'm going to say on that. Like I said, choosing my words carefully. Let's move on to the immediate kind of reaction to Charlie Kirk's death. So the day Charlie Kirk got shot, and this was kind of what my TikTok video was about. Immediately after he was shot, you had Democrat politicians condemning the attack first and foremost. But then you had people in the comments being like, oh, so you're paying for a fascist and a Christian nationalist? Da, da, da. Simultaneously, you had Republican politicians being like, this is so sad. And then in the next breath being like, also, it's liberals' faults. I'm sorry. At that point, the shooter was not caught yet. So what I posted the TikTok about was like, you can't listen to these people. The people in the comments of the Democrat politicians saying, oh, so you're paying for a white supremacist, and the people on the Republican side being like, this is so sad. Also, it's Democrats' fault. That very quickly evolved into Republicans, not so much the elected politicians, more so the like talking head variety, being like, this means war. They want us all dead. Just crazy shit. I don't even have another word to describe it besides just crazy. Again, keep in mind, at that point in time, we had no idea who the shooter was. And it became immediately, Democrats did this. They did this. what? Like, let's not jump the gun here. Talk about stirring the pot. And going on for that, J.D. Vance, the literal vice president of the United States, for some reason, hosted Charlie Kirk's podcast. He hosted it from his literal government office and then lied again and again and again about violence being a left-wing issue. I will play that clip now.
And while our side of the aisle certainly has its crazies, it is a statistical fact that most of the lunatics in American politics today are proud members of the far left.
Now, that's the narrative that they seem to just generally be pushing. I'm here with some facts, some statistics, if you will, although those don't seem to matter much nowadays. According to the Cato Institute, which is a right-leaning think tank, in politically motivated crimes, excluding 9/11, since 1975, there have been, and this is deaths, not just like attacks, there have been 391 deaths by right-wing motivated extremism and terrorism, and 65 left-wing motivated deaths. In percentages, that would be 63% of deaths from right-leaning terrorism and 10% of deaths from left-leaning terrorism. I'll put a link to the article in the show notes. It's a very interesting article. There's also other categories that they list out: for nationalism, Islamism, separatism, and unknown/other. But there's a right-leaning institute going, I don't think so. In terms of since 2020, if we want to get even more recent, just to show that J.D. Vance is a crazy liar, right-leaning, politically motivated terrorism had 44 deaths since 2020. Left-wing, politically motivated terrorism had 18 deaths since 2020. In percents, that would be right-leaning 54% and left-leaning 22%. Now, that is an uptick in left-wing extremism causing deaths. In the broader scope of things, it goes from 10% to 22%. And the Republican numbers go down from 63% to 54%. However, that is still a very significant discrepancy in the percentages of deaths incurred. Additionally, J.D. Vance was on that podcast. This is a totally separate point. I just want to talk about J.D. Vance hosting the podcast. J.D. Vance got on the podcast and said, Charlie Kirk never said Black women do not have the brain processing power to be taken seriously. He never uttered those words. Here's Charlie Kirk saying essentially that.
If we would have said that Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know you do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously.
Now, I know what the Republican defense that's going to be. It's going to be he never said Black women. He just named 3 Black women and then said that. I'm sorry. I'm going to say that that was an outright lie by J.D. Vance. He did essentially say what J.D. Vance said he didn't say. Moving on. Kirk's wife, just 2 days after his assassination, issued a statement in front of his podcasting desk. I do encourage everybody to go, if you don't want to listen to the whole statement, that's fine. But go look at the setup. It's very odd. I could go on and on about the message that they're trying to send. She's in white, which is the color of purity and angelicness. She's standing next to his desk behind a podium with his face on it. Just a very odd setup. And again, 2 days after his death. And she opens the video saying thank you to Turning Point. It's just, it struck me oddly. Like, I felt very uncomfortable watching it, and I don't know if it was like I felt like almost voyeuristic. Like, I was like, I shouldn't be seeing like this grieving wife right now. I don't know. It was very odd, but either way, if you don't want to go watch it, that's fine. In her statement, she repeatedly used the word they. They did this. They will pay. They will do this, this, and that. Again, we, at that point, did not know who the shooter was, but at that point, it was fairly clear that this was a one-man operation. I don't know who they is. They, the left wing? Because as far as I'm concerned, the left wing, any elected politician I saw, any left-wing talking head I saw, condemned what happened to Charlie Kirk, condemned political violence as a whole. And the right wing continued to push and say they want us dead. What? So that then led to, now we're moving into like the weekend, a mass firing operation by right-wing people who essentially what would happen, people would post on social media. Like I said, there were people genuinely posting on social media, like celebrating his death. I condemn that. You should not be celebrating the murder of somebody, period. You need to be able to rise above that and say political violence is wrong, period. Nonetheless, right-wing operation to get people fired. It very, and I do believe, forgot my point and all that, I do believe that people that were celebrating his death should face some sort of consequences. Does that mean losing their job? I'm not sure. I don't think so. Should it mean maybe like social exclusion and like calling them out for being insensitive and kind of shitty people? Yeah, sure. That sounds fair to me. Either way, let's move on. The big site that was doing this was called charliesmurderers.com. Okay. They claimed to have, at the last point, like 60,000 submissions. Now, at one point, they posted like 10 to 15 different submissions on like the homepage of their website. Again, there were a couple that, in my opinion, took it too far, but the majority of them were just people saying, I didn't like the guy. He sucked. Or quoting his words back into the open. That's not celebrating death. And that's when I went, oh, frick. Oh, frick. They are going after people that aren't mourning the way they want them to, or the way that they think they should. That's when I started to panic and go, this is not good. So, obviously, a site like this is in a legally gray area, I'm going to say. There are some states that have laws against doxing. You know, had they posted all 6,000 names, they would have been sued into oblivion. And I assume that's what somebody ended up telling them, because by Sunday night, the website started to get taken down. I believe by the creators themselves. I was panicking so hard that I literally watched the site get taken down in real time. Like every time I'd refresh, there'd be a different element of the website gone. It was bizarre. Just so insane. Also, jury's still out on if it could have been a grift. They did have a donate button for a while. That was the first thing to go on Sunday. But yeah, anyways, but either way, even without that page going like fully live, many people walked into work on Monday and it was the last day of their job. And again, I've come across some of these people on social media. I've watched and seen the video or post that supposedly got them fired. And I don't want to say it wasn't that bad, but it was not celebrating, like genuinely celebrating his death. It was more along the lines of this guy sucked, whatever. I did end up releasing a like legitimate statement on my podcast Instagram page, and that one I was trying to choose my words very carefully. Again, I think it's very complicated for people that have watched this guy just be divisive, to be honest. And there's lots of people that think he caused harm to the greater United States. And I think it's very complicated for people to reconcile how you feel about him and like the enterprise that he built and balance that against the fact that, oh my God, like somebody got shot and killed. But yeah, people were being fired. And Republicans, including talking heads and people with large followings, are not only cheering this on, but encouraging it. J.D. Vance even endorsed it. There's lots of right-wing talking heads that have endorsed it, and they are, of course, being called out for their hypocrisy. Last year, Laura Loomer, who has been pro firing everybody who didn't mourn hard enough, tweeted, quote, "I'm a free speech absolutist. Sorry that's so hard for people to understand. I'm against censorship and debanking. Sticking up for free speech isn't aligning. It's called having principles." 2 days ago, she tweeted, "So many people have been fired. I'm so proud of you guys." Pam Bondi, earlier today, or maybe it was yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday. Pam Bondi said, "There's free speech and then there's hate speech, and there's no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie, in our society. We will absolutely target you, go after you if you are targeting anyone with hate speech." Charlie Kirk himself tweeted, "Hate speech does not exist legally in America. There's ugly speech, there's gross speech, there's evil speech, and all of it is protected by the First Amendment. Keep America free." Thank you, Charlie. Now, do I agree with the fact that there's no such thing as hate speech? Not really. However, Pam Bondi crossed the line, and there's a lot of Republicans even that are calling her out and asking her to resign, because she's wrong. Free speech is protected, and free speech does include saying, hey, that guy sucked. Sorry. Maybe it's insensitive to say that, but it's under your free speech amendments. Or it's under the First Amendment. It's under free speech. So, sorry, Pam, but what's happening is very legal, but that doesn't mean that there aren't these other consequences going on. Like I said at the top, a lot of people have said, like in the conversation that they had with HR, with their bosses, whatever it was, they were told that it wasn't because of what they posted. That's what's wrong. That's the intimidation coming from the top and on top of companies is what's causing people to get fired, not what people actually said. Additionally, JD Vance dismissed calls for unity, saying that there is no unity with someone who lies about what Charlie Kirk said in order to excuse his murder. Now, do I think that that exact point is correct? Yes. I'm going to choose my words carefully. I don't think that what he said is what's happening. There are people that are just putting his words, Charlie Kirk's words that is, back out into the universe. And those are, for the most part, direct quotes from his videos. If you Google the quote that they are commenting or whatever, you're probably going to be able to find the video of where he said it. That's part one. Part two is that people that are saying those things, I do not believe are inherently excusing his murder. In my statement, I said, like, he called for all of these crazy things. He said the Civil Rights Act was a mistake. However, that doesn't excuse politically motivated violence. That was my statement. On its face, yes, you shouldn't use his words to excuse his murder, because at the end of the day, nobody should die by politically motivated violence. All it does is perpetuate more violence. You noticed in the last, 12 months, we've had a whole bunch of politically motivated attacks. It's because they keep on coming. So let's not fan the flames. And like I said, despite the fact that JD Vance is saying you can't unify with people that are whatever he said. As I said earlier, the left wing has by and large condemned the attack and called for calm. So I'm disturbed and confused on why the right is framing it as a entire left wing problem. I'm sure I know the answer. I'm sure we all know the answer. I'm not going to say it right now, but it doesn't make it any less wrong. They are creating a boogeyman of the left and are deflecting attention from the real issue, the real perpetrator, one, the individual, but two, the radicalization of right-wing extremists and the ecosystem that has enabled this. When you are, as Laura Loomer said, a free speech absolutist, anybody can say whatever they want forever. And you get a social media platform like X that promotes that says we won't ban anyone, no matter what you say. You are creating those ecosystems that breed extremists. All it takes is one video. All it takes is a young kid, one video. A couple months later, they're down the right-wing pipeline. Radicalization can happen so easily, and I'm not sure how many people listen to this that are parents of children under the age of 20, but if you are, you should be having a conversation, especially with your sons, about what type of content they are consuming. Sites like 4chan, high breeding ground for extremism, and the Grapers. Are they watching Nick Fuentes? He's the leader of the Graper movement. What type of content are they consuming? Because it is so easy. You watch a video game tutorial and the video game person says something just a little edgy, just a little, oh, I hate when girls join video games. So you watch another one and that person says women are gold diggers. And it goes on and on and on until you find yourself in the incel community all of a sudden and fully believing it. You find yourself starting with Andrew Tate and all of a sudden you're on 4chan. It is so easy to slip into that stuff. And everybody needs to be keeping an eye on what type of content their kids are consuming. Now, outside of the regular people, this was also happening in a professional communicator setting. The day Charlie Kirk was shot, Matt Dowd was fired for calling Charlie Kirk divisive, which is objectively true. He made so many statements that many people would object to. All divisive means is tending to cause disagreement. It's not an inherently bad word, I don't think. Was it perhaps the wrong time to call Charlie Kirk divisive when he had been shot mere hours ago? Sure. Should Matt Dowd have lost his job? Also no. Days later, Brian Kilmeade advocated for lethal injection against homeless people. You know what he did? I can take a guess. Do you think he got fired? No. He just issued an apology. Still gets to keep his job. Why are Democrats capitulating like this? Why is anyone capitulating? There is nothing wrong with exercising your First Amendment right. And ultimately, it's the companies that sit above these people that are capitulating and saying, we don't want the smoke. You're fired. That's insane. That's insane. Additionally, like I said, I'm recording this Wednesday at about 8 p.m. Eastern. Jimmy Kimmel was just taken off the air. I'm sorry, what? Jimmy Kimmel didn't even say anything, like, insane. All he insinuated was the shooter is right-wing, which, okay, maybe that's not, like, 100% concrete fact. I get it. It's hard for people to digest and understand. Okay, well, if Republicans can stand up there and say, the shooter's left-wing, the shooter's left-wing, why can't Jimmy Kimmel get up there and say, well, I think the shooter is right-wing? What is going on? This is horrifying. You should be scared. I'm sorry, not to be an alarmist, but you should be scared. I am so scared about the precedent that this is setting. We watched it right at the beginning of Trump's presidency. The law firms rolled over. The colleges rolled over. Now we are watching it with companies and people. There better be a brave lawyer out there that is gearing up a real good lawsuit, because this is a First Amendment issue. This is an employment issue. This is insane. The hypocrisy is just really what I cannot wrap my head around. I spent years on right-wing Twitter watching them rail against cancel culture and rail against losing their jobs because they didn't get the COVID vaccine. They are now the perpetuators of cancel culture. They are now getting people fired because they didn't mourn Charlie Kirk. And again, yes, maybe there were some people that celebrated his death. By and large, I don't think that's the majority. As I said in my TikTok video that I made, if you ask anybody, if you walked up to 10 random people, I would guess 9 out of 10 would tell you that what happened to Charlie Kirk was wrong and condemn political violence, period. However, if you walked up to 10 Republicans, I'm sure 7 to 9 of them would say, yeah, people deserve to lose their jobs because they're being mean about Charlie Kirk. Like, this is insane. I don't know what happened over this weekend, but it feels like America fell off a very steep cliff. That's all I have to say about that. And I said from the minute the news broke that he got shot, I said, I am so scared for what happens after this. The moment is here. Let me tell you, I'm scared. I am worried. I am concerned. Okay, let's move on and talk broader context to, I guess, try and understand why reactions to this are so polarized. We've seen over the last almost 10 years, but it's been mobilized a lot quicker in the last 9 months, an erosion around norms and civil discourse, which is fueled by hyper-partisan media, that you get when you scroll your algorithm, social media echo chambers, and increasingly polarized even local politics. The use of political violence as a tool or as a performative act is not new, but the scale and normalization of it is. We are also going through a massive bout of compassion fatigue. The Minnesota lawmakers were killed less than 3 months ago. The Minneapolis shooting was a couple weeks ago. And there was a school shooting mere minutes after Charlie Kirk was shot. And I didn't see a single story about that school shooting. That's disgusting. Nonetheless, platforms that allow extremism to flourish as X, such as 4chan, algorithms that reward outrage, that's how social media gets you addicted, and communities that reinforce extreme behavior all contribute to the context for this assassination. We also have to talk about the language that leaders are using. Donald Trump loves to say, like, I'm suing you because you called me a name, and yet he's out there calling Kamala Harris a fascist about 20 times on the campaign trail. J.D. Vance and others in the conservative space are framing the far left as the source of this, again, despite evidence that he could have been right. Again, I understand he was so far right that he almost went left, but I still believe he was a member of the Grapers. The framing of this, though, is not accidental. It's a tactic to consolidate base support, shift away attention from real structural problems, and also to consolidate even more power. I hope I am proven wrong, but I believe this will be the basis for a much larger and broader crackdown on free speech. And keep in mind, this is coming in tandem at a time where Marco Rubio now has the power to deny American citizens passports due to their language. I actually can't even remember if that passed. This week has been, that's either a proposed solution or it is a solution right now. Like, what? We are staring down the barrel of a gun. And I don't mean to be hyperbolic. We are staring down the barrel of a gun of our own making. Now, what does this all say about the term that I'm going to call cancel culture, because that's what it's called in popular discourse? Matt Walsh made a claim and said there is a big difference between the left canceling people and the right canceling people. The left cancels you for saying things that are true. The right cancels you for saying things that are abhorrent. Now, I'm going to say like a libbed up thing right now, but I'd argue that the left cancels you for being a shitty person and the right cancels you for not mourning the right way. Like, what? You can take that argument and just flip it on its head from depending on where you sit or stand. This ultimately is just a clear example of selective moral outrage. It is the first time that Republicans are looking there and seeing one of their own be harmed by gun violence. And he just happens to be at the top of the right-wing political food chain because of the organization that he ran. And it was a very successful organization. I'll give him that. He created a movement at the end of the day. He created a massive movement. But it is outrageous to me. And the example everyone's been giving is like the school shooting examples. So I'm going to use that, especially because, like I said, there was a school shooting minutes after Charlie Kirk was shot. And that got no attention. No attention from the mainstream media. There were, of course, people calling it out on social media saying, what is going on? Why are we focusing on this guy when like this thing happened? And at the end of the day, it was all gun violence. It was all gun violence. Anyways, let's wrap this up. At the end of the day, the shooter was one person. I do not believe that there is some big leftist conspiracy out there. There's no they responsible for this act. Research shows that right-wing fueled extremism and terrorism causes more deaths and has caused more deaths historically than left-wing. And yet the right is continuing to frame this as a leftist problem. Like I said, that is what makes me so scared. That is what makes me think that we are literally at a tipping point. We have been on this descent for so long, and now I think we are at the tipping point. And Republicans, I feel like this should be so obvious to every Democrat what they are doing, that they are going to use this to have broader crackdowns on people's rights. And it's funny to me because they have every single tool of power in Washington. They have the presidency, they have the House, the Supreme Court, the Senate. They have it all. They have the entire thing, and they still can't get done what they quote unquote want, which is authoritarianism. They have all the tools. All the tools. And instead of addressing the problem, which could be guns, it could be general radicalization, they have created a convenient villain out of the left, which I think they will then use to go for their bigger goals. This is overall a moment to reflect on political culture. What does it mean when we elevate extreme rhetoric, when we normalize violence, when we then use it as a tool to silence dissent? How do we hold people accountable while avoiding the temptation to weaponize tragedy for political gain? This episode is not meant to absolve Kirk of his own rhetoric or actions, but it is meant to shed a light on the dangerous ways that politics, media, and public reaction intersects when violence occurs. To close this out, I did want to read an excerpt from Vanity Fair. Ta-Nehisi Coates, who is in my opinion, prolific writer, so eloquently spoken, an amazing writer. He released an article in Vanity Fair called Charlie Kirk Redeemed, A Political Class Finds Its Lost Cause. Read this on the train this morning, and I really think that this sums up a lot of how I'm feeling. This is just an excerpt. I highly encourage you to go read the whole thing. I will put the link to that in the show notes, and then we can all get on with our days and hopefully move forward. Here we go. Kirk subscribed to some of the most disreputable and harmful beliefs that this country has ever known, but it is still chilling to think that those beliefs would be silenced by a gunshot. The tragedy is personal. Kirk was robbed of his life, and his children and family will forever live with the knowledge that a visual record of that robbery is just an internet search away. And the tragedy is national. Political violence ends conversation and invites war. Its rejection is paramount to a functioning democracy and a free society. Political violence is a virus, Klein noted. That's Ezra Klein. This assertion is true. It is also at odds with Kirk's own words. It's not that Kirk merely, as Klein put it, defended the Second Amendment. It's that Kirk endorsed hurting people to advance his preferred policy outcomes. In 2022, when Kirk was frustrated, for instance, by the presence of Leah Thomas on the University of Pennsylvania women's swim team, Kirk did not call for, quote, spirited discourse. Instead, while discussing a recent championship tournament, he said he would have liked to have seen a group of fathers descend from the stands, forming, quote, a line in front of Thomas saying, hey, tough guy, you want to get in the pool? Because you're going to have to come through us. Mere weeks before his death, Kirk reveled in Trump's deployment of federal troops to D.C. Shock and awe, force. We're taking our country back from those cockroaches. And in 2023, Kirk told his audience that then-President Joe Biden was a, quote, corrupt tyrant who should be, quote, put in prison and or given the death penalty for his crimes against America. What are we to make of a man who called for the execution of the American president and then was executed himself? What are we to make of an NFL that on one hand encourages us to end racism and on the other urges us to commemorate an unreconstructed white supremacist? And what of the writers, the thinkers, and the pundits who cannot separate the great crime of Kirk's death from the malignancy of his public life? Can they truly be so ignorant to the words of a man they have so rushed to memorialize? I don't know. But the most telling detail in Klein's column was that for all of his praise, there was not a single word in the piece from Kirk himself. This is the closing paragraph to that article. Words are not violence, nor are they powerless. Burying the truth of the Confederacy, rewriting its aims and ideas, and ignoring its animating words allowed for the terrorization of the black population, the imposition of apartheid, and the destruction of democracy. The rewriting and the ignoring were done not just by Confederates, but also by putative allies for whom the reduction of black people to serfdom was the unfortunate price of white unity. The import of this history has never been clearer than in this moment, when the hard question must be asked. If you would look away from the words of Charlie Kirk, from what else would you look away? I'm going to leave it at that. Like I said, I will have the link to that article in the show notes. It is a great read. There are some references in those back paragraphs that aren't very clear. He opens the article talking about the Confederacy, so that's what that was all about. But yeah, good read. I encourage you to go read it. And yeah, I will see you guys next week. Actually, no, I'm off next week. Oh my god. Okay. Well, I won't see you guys next week, but I will see you guys in 2 weeks on October 6th, I think it is. I am going to be releasing an episode with a man by the name of Kevin Ryan, who is running for Senate in Illinois to take Dick Durbin's seat. Really awesome guy. If you live in Illinois, I do highly encourage you to look him up and get to know him. I think he would make a great senator. And we talked a lot about what it's like to run in one of the races that's going to be the most expensive race in the country. And it was a great conversation. So I'm really looking forward to that coming out. But otherwise, that is it. Thank you guys very much for tuning into this episode of Current Affairs Unfiltered. I know it's been a tough week, and I know that this is a tough topic to talk about. I'm really not sure what I'm going to name this one. Doesn't feel like the place to be witty or try to be funny. Like, I don't know. I guess you'll find out, because by the time you're listening to this, it's going to have a title. Anyways, if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to follow, leave a review, or share it with someone who could use this information. And as always, if you have questions, topic suggestions, or just want to say hi, you can find me on social media at Current Affairs Unfiltered Pod on Instagram, or send me an email at currentaffairs.unfilteredpod@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. Keep asking questions, stay engaged, and please, for the love of God, condemn political violence. I'll see you guys in 2 weeks.